Hello there, everybody. How's it going? Just thought, what better way to spend my Sunday afternoon than to field some questions about astrology. So here I am, and hopefully very soon here will be lots of you. And, I'm going to kind of say this now, just so people understand what this is about. Hello, Amy. How are you? This is not about me answering questions about your chart. Okay, I just want to say that straight off the bat. This is about any questions you might have about how certain things in astrology work, how astrologers do things, things along those lines. Occasionally I do these things where, people can mention things off the bat, and I'll mention things with their chart like I did with the Rahu and Ketu thing, but I don't like getting into that too much, and I will tell you why. I don't have your entire horoscope in front of me, and I don't want to give you inaccurate predictions based upon just, one quick thing in your chart. It just doesn't really work that way. So that's the first thing in the astrologer's toolkit. Be careful giving people predictions based upon 3 things that they spout off about their chart, because in many instances it's going to be incorrect, right? So, please pardon me, I'm not going to go into personal interpretations of things from people's charts, okay? If you want me to interpret something in your chart, please do visit my website and schedule a consultation with me, okay? Somebody's asking if Venus is combust, is the physical signification of marriage burnt? Combustion is a very tricky subject because combustion is based upon local space, right? And one would think that it is when 2 planets are within a certain range of degrees within each other, but sometimes planets in some places of the planet, and some places on the Earth, I should say, are not combust when they're within a certain range of degree. And really, you have to use certain calculations that are from Surya Siddhanta. Astrologers have gotten lazy over time, and they just kind of look at, planets within certain degrees, and they go, that's combust. But really, it's based on where you are on the planet. And to give a good signification of that, have you ever heard of Jupiter conjuncting Venus, and you go, wow, I want to go out and look up in the night sky and see those 2 planets conjuncting each other? And then you go outside expecting that those 2 planets are going to be right like that, and you look up and they're like that. And that's because of where you are on the Earth. Now, a similar thing can happen in terms of combustion, okay? And that's one thing to be aware of. But what tends to happen when that goes on is whatever the combust planet represents in the person's chart, there develops an incompatibility with that particular thing. So for instance, if it's Venus, sure, that can create some incompatibilities with marriage or incompatibility with your marriage. But there are some other mitigating factors in the chart that can make it so the marriage can work, right? So for instance, if you've got a strong, Dara Karaka, or, if you've got strong ninth lord, things along those lines, those things can help to mitigate it a little bit. So it's not always straight off the bat, if you've got a combust Venus, you're married, you're not going to have marriage, right? So you can't just say that. You have to look at a lot of different factors. Okay, let's see what else that everybody else is asking. Okay. Somebody else was asking, I think I might have just answered the question about combustion, but just to kind of say it, think of it as in, let me give you an astronomical representation. Sorry, I just had a bit of hair on my fingernail. Here is the Earth, okay? Here is the sun. When a planet is combust from the appearances here on the Earth, and I want to say from the appearances here on the Earth, right? The planet that is combust will be behind the sun in terms of, well, actually, it is behind the sun because of the orbital path. It's probably a better way to express it. I was trying to think of a clear way to express it. But because the planet is conjuncting the sun or getting close to the sun and it's behind the sun, its rays get disrupted from reaching the Earth. So the rays of that planet or the energy of that planet has a hard time physically manifesting here on the Earth. And so in terms of the individual's horoscope, it tends to create an incompatibility with that particular factor in the chart. Jaimini astrology and how to read Charadasha based on whose interpretation of Jaimini? Okay. That's the whole thing. Jaimini wrote Jaimini Sutras in code. Why did Jaimini write Jaimini Sutras in code? Because he didn't want people who were going to come along and just want to read something quickly and abuse astrology to gain access to the wisdom. He wanted a student to be sincere, to really go into it deeply, to try to figure out what he was trying to say and what he was trying to express until they had spent so long studying it that they understood it. Now, with Jaimini astrology, some people use Charadasha. I use Chara and Avamshadasha. And there are so many different ways to interpret Jaimini astrology, right? And that would be, a factor for a whole class in and of itself, right? And the things I tell you might be vastly different from what another astrologer tells you. And maybe that's a good point to go into. The Astrologer's Toolkit, which is one of the things I wanted to talk about today, which is there are so many different astrologers using Vedic astrology. Equally, there are so many different techniques that everybody is using, right? And it's phenomenal, really. So there are some astrologers who don't know anything about the techniques that I use. Does that mean they're stupid? No, not at all, right? I'm equally stupid about a lot of other astrologers' techniques. And so I just wanted to kind of share today that astrology is really vast, and different astrologers develop different techniques that work for them. So I may tell you things when you ask me questions, and what I really hope for individuals, and I always tell this to my students in my on my astrology courses, is take the information that I'm giving you, work with it, use it as a set of rules, but when you become comfortable with those rules, really kind of explore things and see how things work. Explore things in a safe manner and in an experimental manner, reflecting back on previous charts, not in somebody's consultation, but reflecting back on things. Speaking on the Astrologer's Toolkit, I've got something new that I've been kind of developing, which is how to interpret nakshatras more accurately. Because one of the things that perplexes us astrologers in terms of the nakshatras is how to determine if a nakshatra is going to function in more of its positive polarity and more of its negative polarity, right? And I'm not going to go too deeply into this right now. I've been working on a set of techniques that are still in development. Probably within the next few months, I'll put out some information about it, and I'll probably teach a course on it. But I've been finding it working really excellently for me. So I kind of wanted to put that information out. Okay, so let's see what else people are asking in terms of questions. Other books on the nakshatras. With the nakshatras, it's really difficult. Why? Because most of the information that's there in classical texts on the nakshatras, kind of goes back to the Rig Veda, which talks about deities. So nobody really knows how to use the nakshatras very wonderfully, right? Or completely. There's a lot of people who know how to use them wonderfully, right? Like Dr. Arjun Pai is really good with it. James Mendoza, really wonderful with the nakshatras. So many excellent, Kapil Raj is really excellent with the nakshatras. So many excellent astrologers who know how to use the nakshatras, but nobody has it completely because they're slightly mysterious, right? Okay, let's see what else we've got here. So in terms of books, Myths and Symbols, I really find to be the best book. Okay, I'm planning on writing one, but I seem to have a hard time breaking away from doing personal consultations and teaching classes. And when I do, I'll let everybody know. I started it, but it's kind of in limbo right now. Okay. How to interpret Lajatati avasthas for relationships. I find with Lajatati avasthas, and different astrologers may tell you differently, I find Lajatati avasthas, wait, I'm interrupting myself. I already made an eclipse video. Look for it online. So with the Lajatati avasthas tend to show the level of fulfillment an individual can get from something, right? For predictive purposes, I have found personally myself other techniques to work better. There's a set of techniques that I use that kind of blends together Jaimini concepts with Parashara concepts, and I found that to work really excellently in terms of predicting concrete things. And then I go back and I look at the Lajatati avasthas in order to determine whether that thing that's being created for the individual is something enjoyable or something that's difficult, right? And that's how I tend to use the Lajatati avasthas more than anything else. If you're interested in that course, you can feel free to email me through my site. We're several classes in, but if you are pretty adept at astrology, you could catch up through watching the videos. Okay, let's see what everybody else is saying here. Okay, let's scroll up and find some questions. And please feel free to ask any. Transit techniques, do I offer a class to learn these? Amy, yes, it's the same class that I mentioned just a moment ago that is about learning how to predict concrete things with a blend of Parashara and Jaimini techniques. And if you want to contact me, I can guide you towards that course, right? If you want to join us on it. All right. Let's see what other questions we got. A lot of different things can happen when the sun and moon are eclipsed in the chart. One thing I have found, and it's not always going to be the case in every single instance, you'll see a lot of people who were adopted who end up being born on an eclipse, right? Because they may not know one of their parents, or a child whose one of their parents was away from them. Like I looked at a chart in one instance where the person knew their mother, but they didn't know their father, and they were born on a solar eclipse. So you'll find all sorts of things like that. So it can really depend on the situation in terms of concrete things. In terms of psychological things, well, if you've got the sun eclipsed, there's a deeper disconnection on many levels through the individual not really knowing themselves that fully. Of course, over the course of their life, they'll become better at that. People who are equally born on solar eclipses, they tend to be a little more humble, but maybe sometimes they can have low self-esteem issues as well, dependent upon which node is conjuncting the sun. If it's K2 conjuncting the sun, those people can be perfectionists because they're always trying to prove a point. If they're born on a solar eclipse, equally the moon is going to be eclipsed as well, so not really in touch with their emotions. The information that they're picking up on with their senses may sometimes be distorted, and if they go into it too emotionally, it begins to affect their capacity to see through to the heart of who they are. If you've got Rahu doing the same thing, basically the person may be somewhat, they may hide from their emotions, or they may hide their emotions, or they may try to escape their emotions. They may have an identity crisis, shortly identify with specific things in their life, only to find out that that's not them, because they're really searching for different pieces of themselves. Really, it's a completely vast subject. So I just want to touch on that briefly. All right. Somebody's saying their screen is frozen. Is anybody else having a problem with the screen being frozen? If not, then please refresh the screen on your end. According to me, is the moon nakshatra more important, or the ascendant nakshatra? Basically, it's not going to be the same in every single chart, but the moon nakshatra is very vital because that forms something called the Janma nakshatra. And basically, using something called Tarabala, it helps to explain how an individual is going to encounter energies of certain planets. Right? Is an energy of a specific planet going to be frustrating to them? Are they going to be open to receiving the impulses of that planet? Are they going to try to cooperate with that planet? So the Janma Nakshatra is very important. Can anybody else not hear me? Please let me know before I say another word. I'm going to wait and see if somebody says they can hear me. Okay. Hello, hello, anybody there? Nobody can hear me. Somebody's saying no problem for me. Everybody's saying they can hear me. Okay, so people who are having a hard time hearing me, please try refreshing your video. Okay, click the refresh button. Okay, let's find another question. Thank you, everybody. Let's have some more questions. Let's see what we get going. Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody. I'm waiting for somebody else to ask another question. You've all been so responsive. Everybody's saying good audio and visual. How do you find your purpose in life? So many different techniques for that. I have a specific technique that I use. I could not explain it just in this video. Basically, I need to rectify a person's birth time in order to do that because I do a lot of work with house cusps. But I tend to work with the nodal axis in the Stelliums chart and in the Rashi chart, looking at nakshatra connections, looking at the Stelliums deities. I do a similar thing with Ketu and Rahu in the Rashi chart to add into that in order to look at the karma that's a little closer to the surface. Then I look at all the self-related factors, see how the individual is approaching that, and additionally look for the planet that creates the Ishta Devata for the individual, because that's also going to show one of the focuses for the individual in order to help to liberate them from the karma that's there from Ketu and Rahu. Okay, that if you're interested in me doing that on your chart, people, you can either sign up for a karmic analysis consultation or one of the tier 1 and tier 2 consultations. Okay, let's see. Do I use the equatorial nakshatra position? I do use the equatorial nakshatra position, and that's why everybody is always asking me, right, why are your nakshatras different? But I don't want to go too deeply into that. The nakshatra calculations that I use work well for the system that I use to do astrology, and other astrologers using the ecliptic calculations, using different calculations than I do, that works really well for them. It's really a matter of what works best for the astrologer. Okay, so let us see. Don't have PayPal. You don't need PayPal to sign up for a consultation. You might need a debit card. Okay, let's see what everybody else is asking here. What's a good way to connect with the energies in the chart and channel them accordingly in one's life? That's a broad question. Can you refine that question a little more deeply? Because I'm not really sure, because obviously it's the best way to do it would be to know your chart and to really bring those things to your focus. That being the case, though, there are certain planets that if they have what's called low digbala in the chart, it's one of the Shadbala calculations. If it has low digbala, it can be really difficult for you focusing the particular energies of that planet, and you have to really bring a lot of attention to that. So if you know anything about Shadbala, I would look in the chart and see if you have any planets with low digbala, and if you do, really focus more intensively on those planets. I don't, Boeing 777er, I don't tend to work with the nakshatras in terms of them being activated at a certain time. I'm not saying that's not accurate. I'm sure it is. It's just not one of my techniques. So I would look at that through a person's chart and see what dashas they're in, okay? If someone I know has karma but keeps coming back, but you can't seem to get along with them and solve the karma, can the chart help to solve? Oh, someone you know that you have karma with keeps coming back, but you can't seem to get... Yeah, the chart can help to solve the problem because it can help you to understand what that karma is and why perhaps they keep coming back. Okay, so that is a good thing to look at in that regard. All right, let's see what else we got here. One time I mentioned an Indian writer on Vedic astrology. Can I what? I'm sorry. Not getting the full question. Well, a planet can be in good dignity, Mula Trikona, but it has low Shadbala. So comparing that to somebody else's chart who has a planet that's Mula Trikona with high Shadbala, that's going to be more powerful. If it's lower Shadbala, below 100%, you're still using that planet to a high degree of efficiency as per the capacity that it has in your particular horoscope. I don't know which astrologer you mean. What did the astrologer write on? Because there are a lot of Indian writers that write on Vedic astrology. So I'm not sure which one I meant. If you meant the one that writes the book on the nakshatras, that particular one, that's Bipin Bahari, Myths and Symbols of Vedic Astrology. Okay. Planets in Mula Trikona in late degrees. Depends on if it is an odd or an even Rashi. Okay, if it's an odd Rashi, that planet will be Mula Trikona. It may be able to be productive in terms of creating things, but those things are prone to decay. If it's in the last 6 degrees of an even sign, that planet is going to be able to create things that are more productive, but it's going to need a little bit of help from other planets in terms of creating it. Okay, that's a quick answer to that. Amy, you might be able to find that solution in your own chart. I would say you probably would be able to through, analyzing the nodal axis, seeing if something's coming up with relationships. Those are things that would show in the karmic analysis thing that I was talking about. Okay. If a planet is in its own sign in most of the Varga charts, that's a very powerful planet. That planet is, a simple way to say that is that planet is going to carry the energy of that sign in a lot. It's going to be very potent in that regard, dependent upon whether that planet's debilitated in all the Varga charts, though. It'll still be a powerful planet, only a powerful debilitated planet, okay? All right. Let's see what else we've got. Okay. I'll just wait until I see one I can answer. No right or wrong in astrology, everybody. Okay, just so you know. It's all per person's chart. What is the greatest chart I've ever seen? That's a difficult question. Great in what capacity, though? That's the question, right? Because it depends on great in what capacity. I've seen lots of very intense charts. I've seen intensively difficult charts. I've seen intensively powerful charts. I can't really, I remember seeing one recently, but I can't really remember much about it. If there is malefic, debilitated, but retrograde, can this be good if it's in a house like the ascendant? Well, you will probably reflect more upon the meaning of that planet and stand a greater chance of integrating what the debilitation of that planet is about. That brings up another subject, cancellation of debilitation, that I often like to talk about with people. Cancellation of debilitation works. There are several different things that can create cancellation of debilitation and make that planet productive in terms of creating concrete things, right? But that's more where that planet is productive in terms of prediction. Is this planet creating this? Can this planet create that? Especially if a debilitated planet is in the 10th house, it can create its associations, the associations of the planet that's in the 10th house, everything that it's connected with. But a debilitated planet is always going to bring a feeling of lowness to the individual, right? Why? Because there's something with the dignities called the deep tadi avasthas. And so as a planet goes about fulfilling its responsibilities to the chart, if it's debilitated, it will feel low. Okay. Additionally, even if a planet has its debilitation canceled, during the dasha of that planet, or during antardashas, prachantardashas, et cetera, the individual is going to have to confront the debilitation of that planet, and there will be difficulty with it. So you don't fully escape debilitation just by a planet having its debilitation canceled. It would be a similar thing with a malefic debilitated, but in the ascendant, right? It would still bring some difficulties. Okay. So let's see what else we've got going on here. Is exaltation of a retrograde planet canceled? No, I don't think so. Other astrologers will think so, but that's based upon techniques. Using the techniques that I use, it wouldn't matter if a planet that was retrograde, it would still be a powerful planet. It just creates results in a different way. People have this concept that retrograde planets are bad, right? Well, I guess it depends on what you're looking to achieve. If your only thing in life is how much money am I making? What is my job? When am I going to meet the love of my life? When am I going to have this? When is God going to shower cookies on me from heaven and make me the happiest person in the world? Well, sure, maybe a retrograde planet that's associated with all those cookies from heaven that you want can then be a bad thing, because you may try to focus that planet externally, right? Which doesn't mean you're not going to have cookies from heaven, because it might work that way. You might get chocolate chips, some oatmeal raisins showered upon you, peanut butter, all sorts of good cookies and everything like that. It depends on what some of the other associations of that planet, right? But retrograde planets generally tend to be more internalized. So there's a meaning why they're retrograde. You don't want to just automatically think, oh, this is bad and I'm cursed with this retrograde planet. You're never cursed with any planet in your chart. It's there for a reason. And that reason is to help you to confront your karma. Okay. Let's see. What else do we have here? It can be very useful to try to connect with the deity's energies of one's ascendant, moon, and Atmakaraka nakshatra. Basically, one of the best techniques to do aside from that is to identify the Ishta Devata, because that's the one deity that's going to be a focal force for you. And there's a specific technique that you do for that. Again, that's in the karmic analysis if you're interested. 0-degree planets, are they always weak if the Shadbala is high and it's a Yoga Karaka? Planets that are at 0 degrees means that they're going to be Mrita if they're in an odd sign. And if they're in an even sign, they're going to be Bala. Okay? Mrita planets are dead. They have a hard time being productive. Bala planets are infantile. They have a hard time being productive too, but they stand a greater chance if there are other strong planets helping them. That being the case, if a planet is in its own house, Mula Trikona, or exalted, it makes that planet something called Jagrat, which is awake. That planet can then be more productive, but because of being Mrita, if it's in the early degrees, at 0 degrees of an odd sign, those things that it creates stand more of a tendency to decay over time. If the planet is Bala, being at 0 degrees of an even sign, I'm sorry, if it's at 0, I've got it backwards, didn't I? Sorry, come on, brain, work for me. Yep, sorry, even signs, right? 0 degrees of an odd sign, a planet's Bala. 0 degrees of an even sign, it's Mrita. So cancel clear. So 0 degrees of an odd sign, a planet is Bala. 0 degrees of an even sign, it's Mrita. So I'll say it one last time. 0 degrees of an odd sign, Aries, Gemini, Leo, Libra, Sagittarius, and Aquarius, it is going to be Bala. 0 degrees of an even sign, meaning Taurus, Cancer, Virgo, Scorpio, Capricorn, Pisces, it's going to be Mrita. So when a planet's Mrita, if it's own house, Mula Trikona, or exalted, it becomes Jagrat. So it can produce things, but those things stand a tendency to decay over time. If a planet's Bala, it can maintain those things that it creates. Okay? All right, let's see what other questions we've got here. I may only have another 5-10 minutes, people, just so everybody knows. Let's see what we've got here. What if a malefic planet is the chart ruler? Okay, let's give people some good ideas of understanding malefic planets. I don't like the word malefic, and I don't like the word benefic, because it makes it sound like there are some cosmic baddies that are out there to hurt you. And it makes it sound like there are some cosmic goodies that are out there to help you. Really, the term krura, which means cruel, and somya, which means gentle, is a much better term. Okay, krura, meaning cruel, otherwise known as malefic planets, can create really good things in your life. It's just that they happen with a lot more stress and a lot more effort. It's hard to produce those things. That's the best way to understand that. Okay, Atmakaraka in Gandanta. Well, how strong is your Mercury? That's the key factor. If you've got a strong Mercury, it's not going to be as bad. Okay, why? The Gandanta points are always in Mercury-associated nakshatras. So having a good, solid Mercury gives you the discrimination in order to handle it. What's happening with the Gandanta points, right? It marks a shift between the primary guna associated with each nakshatra. The first 9 nakshatras are rajasic by nature, right? They can be very energetic, racy, sometimes very self-oriented. The second 9 nakshatras are tamasic by nature. They're very dense, heavy, slow-moving, resistance, things along those lines. Third 9 nakshatras are sattvic by nature, right? So they tend to be more balanced, inspired, things along those lines. So when you have a Gandanta point, that marks a shifting point between either the Rajasic to Tamasic, the Tamasic to the Sattvic, or the Sattvic back to the Rajasic nakshatras. And it always happens in a mercurial associated nakshatra. Mercury in Gandanta and is itself the Atmakaraka. It would depend a lot on the strength of Mercury, which I judge in a different way, and I couldn't tell you straight off the bat. Okay? So if you want to give me the degree of your Mercury and in what Rashi it's in, and give me its dignity, I might be able to help you with that, but I'm not here to read people's charts, but I will give you an idea of that. Maybe it's not even your own chart. How do you interpret stelliums? It's a lot of planets influencing each other. Basically, depends on if Ketu and Rahu are one of those. That can make it even more difficult. And if one of those planets is a cruel planet, there can be a planet getting shamed. Definitely look at the stellium and look at the house opposite that stellium. That's going to be an important part of the person's life. So many different things to take into consideration. I generally handle it as per the dasha an individual's in. What I say, patience and endurance are the most important qualities to harness through all tests in your dashas and not get lost in the turbulence. Most definitely. Most definitely. Okay. Saturn retrograde is not inherently bad or good. I use Bhavachalita chart in a different manner. I use house cusps. That's what I use. That's the easiest way to describe it. Okay? All right, another couple minutes, people, then I'm going to need to go. But, you know, hey, if there are some of these things that you're interested in, like a karmic analysis or anything else, or me looking into the eclipse in your chart, please feel free to schedule through my website, AuthenticAstrology.com. Let's see. Okay, so let's see what we've got going on here. That Mercury is not going to be as bad, yeah, because it's going to be Bala, okay. Atmakaraka dasha is the most prominent dasha. There's not always, the most prominent dasha is going to be the dasha of either the strongest or the weakest planet, and those planets being combined with other planets in that same Rashi, right? And so it's a lot of different factors. So for instance, let's say you've got a Mula Trikona moon or an exalted moon, right? Then moon dasha can be really powerful. Let's say you have Jupiter in Cancer. Moon Jupiter is going to be very powerful, exceptionally powerful. So it depends on a lot of different factors, okay? That's probably the clearest I can answer that. All right. Combust Mercury, it depends on what Mercury rules in the chart, okay? There will be an incompatibility with those things in the individual's life. That's why I've been talking in my eclipse videos about seeing what Mars rules in your chart, because wherever Mars is ruling in your horoscope, that's going to be a key focus for you with this eclipse period, okay? All right, everybody, I think that's going to do it for today. Thank you all for joining in. I enjoyed doing this. We'll do it again sometime soon. Again, you can feel free to schedule an astrological consultation with me through the astrological services page of my website, AuthenticAstrology.com. Those of you who were interested in the predictive course that I was talking about, if you're, pretty adept at astrology and good at catching up, please feel free to join us. We're several classes in, but you can catch up through the videos. I teach a lot of how to judge concrete things through Vimshottari Dasha and how to work with the Lajatati avasthas in association with that, kind of going back and looking at how to incorporate those after the hand. Thank you, everybody. Enjoyed it. Bye now.